Hey guys, Joan Rips here with another daily Spireside chat. Today I'm going to be continuing my over-explanation of an Ascension 15 silent run. I'm not wearing my glasses. Uh, and I'm not actually sure when this is coming out as I record it. I'm just going to record them all in the same night so I can get it out of the way and play other runs in the account, but I don't know if I'll release them all like one day after the other or what. Probably it will depend on how much people like the first one. So whatever time this is, I hope that things are good and that you are doing well and that the world is a wonderful place right now. Um, Last episode we played Act 1 and we had a really interesting Act 1 path and whale decision, which was used as justification for randoming our boss relic, which I believe was the correct decision. We got Orrery, which is not the best outcome, but which got us some really nice cards. We picked up 2 backstabs. Are the cards out of order? 2 backstabs, a dagger spray, a leg sweep, and a flying knee. Yeah, that's what we got. And then we got 2 dashes later on. And that enabled us to take a path through Act 1, which got 4 elites killed. Unfortunately, we didn't pick up the strongest relics from that. I think that Bag of Preparation's incredibly strong. Bottled Tornado is quite good. Frozen Egg might do something someday. It hasn't yet. Mango's okay, and Birdface Stern is quite good, but we haven't gotten any run-winning relic yet. And we were able to kill the Hexaghost with our deck. It took a good amount of time. We don't have that much damage over the course of a long fight, and unfortunately got given no energy relic from the Hexaghost. So we're going to have to fight Act 2 with still only 3 energy. We have been able to add some other strong cards to the deck. We took Astrolabe from the Hexaghost and transformed 3 of our strikes because our defends are very good cards with 2 copies of Footwork in our deck. And our strikes turned into an Afterimage plus, a Dash plus, and a Concentrate. So we actually have 3 dashes in the deck. We have 4 innate cards, so we basically know what we're doing on turn 1 like all the time pretty much. And we've also been able to pick up a Glass Knife and an Adrenaline. Adrenaline means that we'll have some really good turns despite the fact that we're only on 3 energy. So, my game almost crashed there. It hung for a second. Let's move on to Act 2. Act 2, the city. First thing to do in Act 2 is work out which of the 4 nodes we're going to be moving to, and in order to decide that, we need to know what the act looks like. We're going to be fighting the Collector. The Collector is a fight where you're basically facing pretty much, like, it doesn't scale up very quickly, the incoming damage that you're facing. It's just sort of fairly linear throughout the entire fight. Some turns you get attacked by 2 guys, and sometimes you would get attacked by 3 guys. It's a damage which very much rewards having powers to deal AoE damage. Something like a Noxious Fumes or 1,000 Cuts would be great, especially because you get debuffed very heavily by the Collector on turn 4, I believe. It gives you weak, frail, and vulnerable. And having powers which create block or damage for you, power-based damage and block is typically not affected by those debuffs. So already in our deck, actually, we have an Afterimage which will gain us just as much block when we are frail as it does when we're not frail. And it would be lovely to have like a Noxious Fumes or 1,000 Cuts to help us deal damage when we're weak. Looking at the Act, even though we're on 3 energy, I am quite interested in fighting Act 2 elites. I think we're very good at killing one of the elite fights and not too bad at killing other ones. I expect us to take damage in them though, so I am looking for paths which have campfires available while fighting elites. We're also sitting on 329 gold, so turning that into a relic at a store as soon as possible would be very nice. Unfortunately, looking at this path, the most appealing elite path is here. Elite Fire, Elite Fire. It's a very safe way to kill 2 elites and pick up 2 more relics for ourselves. It does not allow us to get to any of the stores in the Act, though. So I think that that's a no-go. In Act 2, hallway fights are no joke. Hallway fights in Act 2 can be very scary, and so taking events over hallway fights wherever possible. I guess these are called enemies. That's what I mean when I'm talking about hallway fights. These are enemy nodes. Taking unknown question marks over the enemies whenever possible is a great idea, in my opinion. I think what I'm going to do is we'll take these two events. Enemy store. Another reason to not be fighting enemies is there aren't that many cards which are great for us. I guess... Powers are really good for us. Act 2 events are pretty good, also. We don't want to take the bite event, but Apparition is, I think, good. There are just a lot of pretty good Act 2 events. I think Act 2 events tend to be more powerful for the player than Act 1 events are. We could go here, but we're forced into an elite, which I don't really love. I like this more. We get to base where we go from there off what the relic that we get actually is. It's just a question of whether we want 4 chances to get something like a Noxious Fumes, or if we'd rather take the events, which saves us some HP, probably. Although we heal for 4 on turn 1. It's a really close decision, in my opinion. I'm going to try out the fights. That might be a little bit more interesting. We'll get more card decisions and stuff like that, and it's something that I wouldn't usually do, so it'll be interesting for me to do something a little bit different. You have to decide here. There's no reason to play Afterimage right now. Obviously, it would create block for us, but it doesn't do anything because we're not getting attacked. Have to decide if we're actually playing Afterimage and Footwork, because we can just deal 6 damage. If we used an Exploding Potion, we could end the fight right now. I think we create so much block this way that it's fine. We also heal for 4. Concentrate Plus lets us double dash this turn, which is just fine. Now, this enemy does frail us, which means that this turn our defends are not working as well, and we don't have enough damage to kill him, unfortunately. I think playing the Footwork for the 2 heal and then playing the defense, it's pretty boring, but that's what we gotta do. And Slice, which we picked because, well, I think it was good at the time, but also because it gave us a card which might help us win if we were stuck on 3 energy. It's pretty good there. Got a Cloak and Dagger Backflip and Crippling Poison. Cloak and Dagger is a card I would love to put in this deck. We've got a lot of reasons to do so. We've got double Footwork. We have Afterimage, and Cloak and Dagger adds another 2 block with Afterimage because you play a Shiv off it. We also have enough money to potentially pick up something like a Kunai or a Shuriken, which Cloak and Dagger is incredibly good with. I didn't talk about the other cards. I should have talked about the other cards. I'm sorry. I'll try to talk about the other cards from now on. But suffice to say, I didn't think they were as good as Cloak and Dagger there. Backflip and Crippling Poison. Crippling Poison was very poor, and Backflip was like... If we had more 0 cost in the deck, we could have considered Backflip, but right now the card draw doesn't do very much for us. It does a little bit for us, but I don't think it does enough for us for Backflip to be better than Cloak and Dagger, and Cloak and Dagger has better relic interactions, in theory. Okay, so the issue with this fight right now is we deal half damage to these enemies, unless we attack them 3 times, and we can't attack them 3 times. Well, we can attack them 3 times, but after we do so, we're out of attacks. I think I'm going to let this guy deal... Let's see, he's going to deal 2 damage to us. That's fine. Let's knock one of the guys who's buffing himself out of this guy. This is a fight where Dagger Spray is very good, and where cards like Dash and Predator are very bad, unfortunately. Got an Adrenaline... Okay, this is going to be a blocking turn, it looks like. We won't need to play our Concentrate. Let's get weak applied here and defend. I think it's becoming very clear very rapidly how bad our deck is at dealing damage right now. Okay, Dagger Spray, though, is a very nice pickup. This guy's already buffed himself, so we want to prioritize killing him instead of the back guy, even though this guy has more health, so he's harder to kill. And I wanted to get full damage out of Glass Knife, so this guy's gonna stand up again, and that's too bad that we didn't kill him before that happened. But with the Flying Knee, we were able to get full Glass Knife damage. Seems well worth it. We have 4 energy this turn, which means we are just like rich, basically. We can do whatever we want. At this point, I think the fight's over. Yeah. Not the most interesting thing to say, but hey, that's the truth. Unless we draw very, very, very poorly. That should be the end of the fight. We took a little bit of damage, but not too much. Look at how much block we're generating with these 2 footworks in the after image. Very good at creating block, but very poor at dealing damage, unfortunately. It's funny, I just tried to look at Twitch chat. I have like ingrained in my brain, because I'm usually playing live in front of a lot of people, like in moments where I'm sort of going through the motions, I go to read Twitch chat so I can interact with people and make better use of my time. We got a regen pot there, which helps us avoid resting. I'm not sure how necessary that's going to end up being. And a Cloak and Dagger Plus, which I'm going to take for all of the reasons that I took Cloak and Dagger and more, because this one's upgraded. Deadly Poison. We've been offered enough poison cards to make poison a damage source for us in this run. The problem with pursuing these cards is that they don't have block written on them. And obviously we have these footworks and stuff, so we want cards that have block written on them to make block with. And they don't deal upfront damage in the way that something like Glass Knife or Dagger Spray does. On the other hand, they fill in the big problem that our deck is, which is that it doesn't deal any scaling backloaded damage. I think Cloak and Dagger is slightly more appealing than Leg Sweep there, but only slightly. So I could have seen myself taking Leg Sweep. If Cloak and Dagger hadn't been there, I would have taken Leg Sweep. Cloak and Dagger was there. We're fighting against Snecko. Snecko is like one of the reasons that Escape Plan isn't a great card, and one of the reasons that something like Deflect isn't always the card that you are really, really excited to have in your deck. Sorry, Escape Plan's quite a good card, but it's made worse by the existence of Snecko. We're now confused, and all of our card costs are randomized between 0 and 3, so we're a little bit at his mercy. We're also getting vulnerable on turn 1 of the combat, which is quite bad for us. It means we're expecting to take a lot of damage this turn. And our card draws haven't helped that much with that. Let's see. Dash almost makes as much block as Defend, Deflect, and deals 10 damage. So I think we're going to go with that. It makes, let's see, these guys make 15 plus the 2 from after image is 17. So it makes 3 less block but deals 10 damage. And I think that in this situation, like, there's no way to guarantee that we're not taking damage throughout the fight. Dealing 10 and taking only an extra 3 as punishment is well worth it, in my opinion. We're getting re-vulnerable, and as he plays the vulnerable attack, we have vulnerable on us, so it's hitting us for 15. Gross. I'm going to Adrenaline here. I don't see a good reason not to, even though it's very high cost. And Dash plus deals more damage than Cloak and Dagger plus Strike. So might as well use that. I'm not using the regen potion here because the fight could very easily end before it finishes ticking. But we are starting to look for opportunities to use it. Another thing to consider is we might just heal up to full again off Bird Face Turn and never need it right now. Distraction Plus adds a random skill to our hand which costs 0 this turn and exhausts itself. Distraction Plus is okay here. I think it's actually good here. Having another card that we can play for 0 energy is very nice when we're stuck at 3 energy. The silent skills are not all incredible by any stretch of the imagination. Sometimes this is going to be just sort of a dead card. We don't have to worry about getting a really bad skill and seeing it over and over again because we have such a large deck already. I just think it's pretty good. It also counts twice for Afterimage for what it's worth, so it's getting us 2 block for 0 energy, even in pretty bad situations. Quick Slash, card draw just isn't as valuable for us when we don't have enough energy to use it, and the only reason that we would have enough energy to use it would be the 1 turn per fight where we draw Concentrate. So Quick Slash I don't think is very valuable here, and for Flechettes I don't believe we have enough skill density for that to be great. I think it would be okay, but we just don't have that much card draw. We have several powers and quite a few attacks. We've got like the 3 dashes, the slice, the glass knife. So I think Flechettes would usually deal, like, it would be reasonable for it to deal 12 damage for 1 energy, which isn't that bad. It's going to be very high variance and we don't have any support for it at the moment. Distraction just seems like an actively good card at the moment, so I think we should take it. This should be a pretty easy fight. We could potentially heal off this fight. The AI in this fight, this Mystic, I believe if the Centurion is missing 16 or more health, is what I was told, the Mystic will heal up to twice, I want to say. And so getting some damage on the Centurion on turn 1 ensures that turn 2 is easier. You can see that we're not getting attacked by the Mystic this turn, just the Centurion. Another reason to focus the Centurion down first is that the Centurion defends the Mystic. See, she has a 15 block shield right now. So even though he seems to have more HP, he's repeatedly blocking damage incoming to the Mystic. And when you finish killing the Centurion, his attack which blocks the Mystic turns into an attack with which multi-strikes you. So he becomes more threatening if you kill the Mystic. The Mystic is not threatening on her own at all. So, quite a few reasons to prioritize going after the Centurion in this fight. What this guy is, we've got an outmaneuver, it's not bad at all. We're going to have a lot of energy next turn. I think we're very likely going to have more energy than we can spend next turn, actually. Let's throw some weak on this guy. Yep, by miles. Whoops. Alright, well, nothing really to do about that. We just keep on focusing the Centurion down. We can play cards or not play cards. Sometimes people ask me, like, why didn't you play that card when you could? Or why did you play that card when it didn't do anything? And, I mean, the fact is, in a lot of turns, there are, like, 18 different things you could do, and effectively they all achieve exactly the same thing. And so yeah, that time I played more cards than I did other times, maybe. I don't know. I get asked that quite a lot. I think people are wondering if I like know something that I don't, and no, that's not what's going on at all. It's just sometimes I feel like clicking on cards and sometimes I don't feel like clicking on cards. Okay, we got through the Centurion, so the rest of this fight should be pretty easy. You can see we're only 8 health below max, and the regen pot's a 12-point heal, so by not using the regen pot yet, we've basically banked some extra health. If we do take some damage fighting an elite coming up or something like that, we'll have the regen pot to get us back toward full health. You're seeing a big problem with outmaneuver. I don't value the card very highly. Outmaneuver is a card which, when drawn in your hand, it doesn't do much for you that turn, obviously. It doesn't block or attack or anything. Just next turn you gain energy. And then often, unless your deck is set up very well to abuse it, you just don't draw enough cards to use the energy on, so it doesn't do anything. This is a common experience with playing Outmaneuver. I think Predator deals the most damage and gets us extra cards next turn to help us finally kill this lady. She's healing for more damage than we're dealing, it feels like. Alright. Ooh, 1,000 cuts, and that auto upgrades. And we have the bird-faced urn. This is exactly the sort of card we were looking for. This is, to reiterate, this is why we took 4 fights instead of 2 fights and 2 events. I've talked about how I want this card in my deck multiple times in recent memory, and here it is, and we're going to put it in the deck. So this now gives us so much more damage. Once it's in play. We have to get it in play, of course, but once it's in play, we get so much more damage out of it. Really interesting store. Wow. It's a really interesting store. Apotheosis is typically not great, but I suspect it is better than Toxic Egg here. In a deck with this many cards, the upgrades that we're getting out of Toxic Egg are not going to do much anymore for the rest of the run. Now, Apotheosis I don't think will do much all that consistently, because we have to draw it, and then we have to draw it on a turn where we can play it, despite it costing 2 energy somehow. And both of those things are difficult to pull off in a deck that's, you know, 32, 33 cards and only has 3 energy. Could definitely help with boss fights. I'm very intrigued by Infinite Blades here. Very intrigued by Infinite Blades. Now that we have 1,000 cuts, and we have Bird-Faced Urn, and we have Frozen Egg, so it auto-upgrades, and we have an After Image in our hand turn 1, so it makes us 1 block every turn. This card's starting to reach critical mass, where it is just a really, really good card. And I imagine that, you know, we're likely to pick up more things that it does as well. So would be able to buy Infinite Blades and Apotheosis if we wanted. Toxic Egg is usually a very good relic, but with this many cards in the deck, I just don't see the upgraded skills having as much impact as usual. We could wait on pulling the trigger on our really big purchase for this store here. Although if we go to that store, it prevents us from getting 2 elites in the back half of the act, which might be a thing we can do. Oof, it's a very, very difficult store. I don't think that any of these cards are worth considering at all. At this point, if a card isn't having a massive impact on our deck, it's just not worth spending gold on, because relics do stuff all the time, even when they don't get drawn. Infinite Blades will get drawn on turn 1, that's why I'd be interested in buying it, and Apotheosis does have a very large impact on our deck, although it's very difficult to actually play it. We have to somehow draw it, and we have to somehow justify spending 2 energy on it that turn. It just feels like setting up Footwork, After Image, and Infinite Blades does more for us than Apotheosis does, and that's already our turn where we're spending energy on less efficient things. So I think I'll just buy Infinite Blades. Definitely gonna buy Infinite Blades. Card remove and Fire Potion is what I'm thinking here. And we go Elite Fight, Campfire. Chests actually have a chance to have gold in them. They don't always have gold in them. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. So I think once we got to this chest, we'd know whether we could afford a good relic at the store or not. And then based on that, we could either go to the store or take another couple of elites and end the act. I think this deck can handle elites. Another thing to consider is maybe this deck actually just can't actually kill elites, but I'm pretty sure it can. It's a very odd deck, so it's hard to gauge. I'd be more confident if the deck was more normal, but this deck is bizarre. Yeah, I think Fire Pot and Remove a Strike is okay. I know I've been talking about how the cards don't matter that much and everything, but Strike is just a really bad card in this deck. We basically never want to spend 1 energy on it. It doesn't have block written on it, so it doesn't benefit from all of our footworks. It's just a bad card. We don't ever want to draw that. And I think Fire Pot is better than Weak Potion, but I could be convinced otherwise. The reason I think Fire Pot's better than Weak Pot is this exact fight. I think that Fire Pot's very good here, and Weak Pot doesn't do anywhere near as much. So, there are 3 Act 2 Elite fights. There's this fight with 3 Slavers. There's a fight with a Gremlin leader, and he starts with 2 mini Gremlins and then summons more as the fight goes on. And there's a fight with a Stabby Book. And in my experience, all of the fights are balanced pretty well. When I look at my numbers, I take around about the same amount of damage on average in all 3 of the fights. This fight benefits from front-loaded damage a lot, which means that we're really good at it, because we have 2 backstabs in our starting hand, and we have a Fire Pot in our belt. So nuking this Slaver at the back, he does the most threatening things to you. He vulnerables you, and he entangles you to prevent you from attacking at all for a turn. Killing that guy is really nice. Getting him dead on turn 1 here is what we're going to do, and from there the fight should be relatively easy. I think the only big question is, are we playing all 3 of our powers, or are we trying to play a Cloak and Dagger? We can go After Image, Infinite Blades, Cloak and Dagger. And let's see. We get After Image. We're healing for 4. After Image. Why don't we need Infinite Blades? I don't think we need Infinite Blades, right? I think After Image, Footwork, Cloak and Dagger is actually what we do. Infinite Blades is very nice, but it doesn't seem necessary in this fight after the back guy's dead. This is one of those turns which it's really easy to autopilot through. You might think, okay, what my deck does is it always plays these 3 powers on turn 1, and it plays the 2 backstabs, and then it, you know, scales up in power because these powers are so great and whatever. But we don't have to play those 3 powers. In this case, I think Cloak and Dagger Plus is going to definitely be better. The damage from it's actually relevant too. It saves us from having to use this Exploding Potion. We can save that for later. Could be useful in the Gremlin Elite fight, the Gremlin Leader fight. Yeah. Yeah, this looks good to me. This sort of shows off the power of Backstab to you. This is just the best fight imaginable for Backstab, honestly. So we made it up to 15 block. We'll take 5 damage after healing for 4. So far in the fight, we are slightly down on health, but only slightly. Do we want to play 1,000 cuts now? I guess is the next question. So we'd get 8 plus 3 block is 13 block. Take a little bit of damage. I think the way that it just accelerates the end of the fight so rapidly is worth it. We could definitely take less damage by playing... I mean, we could take no damage this turn if we wanted to take no damage this turn. But I think getting our damage down is worth it. This is... You could sit down and do math on this for hours if you wanted to, and work out exactly what the right answer is. You could, like, set up a simulation or something. I'm playing that largely on feel because I would go insane otherwise. And I believe that taking that little bit of extra damage there is justified because of how rapidly it ends the fight, and because our deck is not able to 100% guarantee that it blocks on every single turn. So ending the fight sooner rather than later prevents us from running into a turn where we just don't have block, which is, you know, that's going to be a terrible turn for us because these guys always attack every turn. If we end up in a turn where we don't have block and we're reliant on After Image to create all of our block for us, we're going to take a lot of damage. So this looked like it's been a pretty good fight. Pretty good fight. It was probably the best elite fight for us, and we did use a fire potion on it, though. So unfortunately, I'm not sure that every elite fight in this act is going to go that way. Ooh, Lantern for an extra energy on the first round of each combat is so good for us to get those powers set up. That's very, very nice. The Ancient Potion's sort of nice, too. We get to pick between Acrobatics, Dagger Spray, and Outmaneuver. I feel like another Dagger Spray is okay here, although I wish that we had some strength to go with it to justify picking it up. It's a good card against the Collector and against the Gremlin Leader, who is likely to be one of these two elite fights. Assuming we're still taking two elite fights, I think we are. Outmaneuver, we had that one fight earlier where Outmaneuver got placed in the deck by distraction, and I got to show you exactly why I don't think it's particularly good here, and I think all the reasons that it used to not be particularly good are still true. Acrobatics to draw a bunch of cards, I'm not seeing why we ever want to do that, basically. We only have 3 energy a turn, and we need those energy to be making block or attack or putting powers in play for us, and Acrobatics doesn't do any of those 3 things. So the only question is, do we want a Dagger Spray for that AoE damage? We have 1,000 cuts, which is really nice AoE damage already. So maybe we don't need it anymore. Maybe what we want to do is get 1,000 cuts in play and then like play a bunch of shivs and have Cloak and Dagger be as large a part of the deck as possible. Because now that we have 1,000 cuts, Cloak and Dagger, like this card deals 6 AoE, gains us 11 block, no, 14 block, and attacks for 8 for 1 energy. This is my like jaw hanging open. Cloak and Dagger is a very, very strong card with Silent. If you get any sort of relic or power interactions with it, it just gets insane. And we don't have any relic interactions with it, but that's like what it does if we play it on like turn 4 once our powers are set up. That's what it will do in a boss fight for us as the fight goes on. So I think I've talked myself into just skipping there. That's fine. We have to decide what we're smithing. Good options, in my opinion, are Adrenaline. I actually think the energy is quite impactful here. It will probably give us an extra... I mean, it could give us a lot. On average, I'd say that's like an extra 10 attack or something. 10 damage per fight. Which is more than, like, the Predator up. I don't think the Predator upgrade does that much. Energy upgrades aren't always great, but when we're this energy suffocated and we have a deck that is this large, the fact that Adrenaline exhausts doesn't matter very much, and we're sort of always going to have something useful to do with that energy. The other big upgrades, I believe, are getting an extra dexterity on this footwork. That'll obviously make us a lot of block over the course of a fight, or the extra Shiv from Cloak and Dagger, I think, is more impactful than the 8 extra damage from Glass Knife, although I'm not 100% sure on that. It makes us an extra block and an extra 4 attack if we don't have 1,000 cuts in play. If we do have 1,000 cuts in play, it makes us an extra 6 attack and 1 block. I guess I've talked myself into Glass Knife. Either Glass Knife or Adrenaline. Or Dagger Spray, actually. What about Dagger Spray? Dagger Spray is just an extra at least 4 damage, but it's much, much more in AoE fights, and we expect to take 2 difficult AoE fights coming right up. Okay. So, those are the cards that I think are good upgrades. I think a lot of them were very close together. The Cursed Tome. In an abandoned temple, you find a giant book open, riddled with cryptic writings. As you try to interpret the elaborate script, it begins to shift and morph into writing you are familiar with. On Ascension 15, this costs us 18 hit points, I believe, which is fine. We're healthy. We have a regen pot even. And there are 3 rewards that you can get from doing this event for 18 HP. The Necronomicon is incredible in our deck. It makes an attack that costs 2. The first attack we play each turn that costs 2 or more plays itself twice. So we have 3 copies of Dash. 1, 2, 3. And 1 copy of Predator. That would be a crazy, crazy strong relic. It does add a curse to our deck as well. We're okay with that because we're regularly drawing hands which have more cards in them than we can play anyway. So most hands that we draw, we don't really care if there's 1 curse in them all that much. That would be great. Enchiridion is another book which what that one does is give us a 0-cost power, a random 0-cost power in our hand at the start of every fight. That would also be very good. The power heals us for 2, so it would be healing us for 2 every fight, and our deck interacts quite nicely with powers. We've got the Cloak and Daggers in there, which interact very well with almost every power in the silent card pool. Just in general, that would be really nice. The last one is Enchiridion, I think? Is Enchiridion the power one? What's the other one? Nilri's Codex, that's the one. Nilri's Codex is the other one. Nilri's Codex, at the end of every turn, we get offered a card pick, and we choose between 3 cards, and whichever one we pick goes in our draw pile. Codex is really, really, really strong always. It's particularly strong here because as we add more powers to our draw pile, they heal us, so it would be a source of sustain for us. Just in general, though, it's going to regularly give you an adrenaline, which is just all upside. It will give you cards that you want very regularly, so it's a very strong relic. The only reason I wouldn't take this event in Act 2 would typically be if I was at low health and it was likely to kill me. Either I would literally die reading the book, like I had less than 18 HP, or I was going to read the book and then I had no way to get back to full health again and just would likely die. Or if I was in a situation where Necronomicon was really bad for me, if my deck was particularly small, so the curse was more relevant, and I had no attacks that cost 2 or more, which happens sometimes in Silent, I might consider not doing it. But in general, if I have the health, I do this. And even if I had no attacks that cost 2 or more, the upside of Necronomicon, if you can find a Skewer or something like that, Skewer, if you play it for 4, Skewer will get doubled at 4 twice, so it will deal just 1 trillion damage. The upside's just way too high. So Enchiridion gives us a random power in our hand at the start of each combat. It costs 0 until the end of turn. I think that's one of the... Yeah, I think that's the weakest possible outcome, but it's still very strong. See if we get gold in this chest? No. We got Bottled Lightning to put a skill in our opening hand. I'm going to put Adrenaline in our opening hand. Our opening turn is getting pretty good, actually. Yeah, definitely put Adrenaline in there. I guess Cloak and Dagger is another option. We have Green Lantern now. So... Cloak and Dagger is a pretty good option, because we play After Image, Infinite Blades, Footwork, and then Cloak and Dagger is our 4th energy, and that's probably the best card that we can possibly play. Adrenaline basically lets us play 2 random cards on top, or we could have Cloak and Dagger, which lets us play Cloak and Dagger, which is probably better than 2 random cards, to be honest. We've got 2 bottles this run, interesting. Let's see, who are we fighting? We're fighting guys who... Okay, I'm going to go Adrenaline because I want to get 1,000 cuts in play earlier, and Adrenaline digs for 1,000 cuts. I like that. Also, if we draw 1,000 cuts in our opener, Adrenaline gives us enough energy to play it. I may actually upgrade Adrenaline now that I've done that at the next campfire where we get a chance to. So if a Caltrops in that fight, that'll deal a ton of damage. It also heals us when we play it, of course. This deck is getting good. Getting quite good. Let's play our Adrenaline. So we got a Cloak and Dagger off that. That's awesome. We don't have a source of weak, unfortunately. I don't think we'll be playing Glass Knife this turn. I think we're going to have to play both of the block cards that we've drawn. The way that this fight works is this guy has a malleable. On taking attack damage, he gains 3 block. Block gain increases as malleable is triggered, resets to 3 at the start of your turn. So every time we hit him, he gains 3 block. Then the next time that we damage him, he gains 4 block, then 5 block, and so on. So the way that you want to play this to deal as much damage as possible is if you can overkill the... No, that's a bad way to put it. If you can deal exactly how much shield he has or less, you want to do so. So this shiv doesn't actually deal him damage, which means it doesn't create a new shield. Otherwise, you just deal as much damage as you can, basically. Got all of our powers into play and took no damage that turn. Really, really nice. We drew Concentrate with 1,000 cuts, so we're able to concentrate. We can Shiv, that gets us a little block and deal some damage. That was actually in the wrong order there. I made a mistake there. He doesn't get shield from the 1,000 cuts damage, so what we wanted to do was Shiv at the end of the turn so that we never created shield for him. Honestly, we've already reached a point where we won the fight, so I just made a sort of loose play there. Wasn't really thinking about it. Let's play Footwork to heal. Don't see anything wrong with that. And we might as well Predator, and we might as well Shiv. Alright, he'll die to us playing any card next turn. I could have regen potted. Probably holding the regen pot is a bad thing at this point. We have a Swift Potion available. I will, I think, prioritize that over the Artifact Potion. Don't think this is doing that much for us at this point. Another Holy Fight? No. Yeah, we're fine. The Artifact Potion's quite valuable in Act 2 against the Chosen, who hexes you, which puts dazes in your deck every time you play a non-attack card. This deck has so many cards in it that I'm not sure how relevant that would actually be, to be honest. So I think it's less relevant than usual. It's also relevant against Frail in Act 2. I think, wasn't I holding this when I fought a Frail enemy? No. I don't think so. Back at the start of the act, a while ago. We have so much block coming out, I'm not sure how much it even matters. We're choosing between Crippling Poison, Flying Knee, and Expertise here. And I don't think any of these cards is particularly good in the deck, and I'm not going to take any of them. Flying Knee might seem like it's okay with 3 energy, but it doesn't have block written on it. And, I mean, honestly, it isn't a Cloak and Dagger. A Cloak and Dagger is so good in our deck at this point that it would be really nice to just take Cloak and Daggers and not take any other cards. If the game could hook me up with that, that would be swell. Alright. So we have 2 After Images in this fight. That's Enchiridion coming through again. And we want to get those both into play to start things off, and then we can go from there. This is a tough fight, which becomes a lot easier if you can deal with the leader's little gremlin adds. And that is pretty easy for us. On turn 1, we can just backstab both of them. The thing is, he wastes his entire turn to create more of them. And he won't do that if you don't kill them. So, especially if he seems like he doesn't have particularly menacing gremlins, it might seem like a good idea to just go ahead and try to kill him. But if you don't kill his gremlins, he will spend his time buffing himself and his gremlins, or attacking you for very large amounts of damage. So it's really important to kill these gremlins so that he wastes his time summoning more gremlins. It makes the fight a lot easier, typically. It's one of the reasons why Dagger Spray was such a high priority for us. Alright. So we have 4 energy here. I see no reason at all not to get Infinite Blades and Footwork in play. I see no reason at all not to backstab both of the gremlins. And from here, the only remaining thing to do is attack that guy and block. I don't think there was a good reason to use a potion here. I might as well use a regen pod at this point, I think. Let's see, we have a Footwork and 1,000 cuts. We're probably going to end up healing to full accidentally off this fight, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. We need to make room for more relevant potions, and this deck is pretty clearly not having trouble having hit points. So that regen pot is not very relevant for us. Just get as much damage as we can this turn. Concentrate doesn't do anything. There's no reason to like gain extra block with it or anything. Alright, we're not doing a very good job of drawing 1,000 cuts, which is an issue with a deck that's this size. Expertise is sort of interesting. We did draw our upgraded dagger spray, which we upgraded sort of specifically for this fight because of how good it is in this fight. I think I will play Expertise this turn. I'm trying to work out how many other cards I play first, because Expertise draws cards until you have 6 in hand. I guess we want to be able to play 1,000 cuts if we draw it, so probably Dagger Spray. I think we must play Footwork. And then we want to be able to play 1,000 cuts, so we get rid of a Shiv as well. Okay, still haven't drawn it. But we get to Cloak and Dagger a bunch. Is that better than, like, Predator? Predator guarantees that we draw 1,000 cuts next turn, and it would have Deflect as well, probably. It doesn't quite guarantee. It almost guarantees it would draw 1,000 cuts next turn. I like that. Spray Predator, and call it a turn. We're up on max hit points accidentally. 10 times 3. So, we have our Piercing Whale. I don't even remember when we took Piercing Whale. It was a while ago. But I'm pretty sure when I did, I said it was really good for Act 2. And this exact situation is why Piercing Whale is great for Act 2. Just a 1-cost card which mitigates 18 incoming damage, basically. It's not going to end up doing quite that much because with Neutralize on the guy, he's not going to be attacking for quite as much. But we will take damage here. I think getting 1,000 cuts into play is worth taking damage in this situation. We're not even going to take that much, is the thing. Oh man, you get to enjoy listening. Oh, we don't even take damage. What am I talking about? You get to enjoy listening to the sound effects of 1,000 cuts slapping on shields. Yeah, this deck's pretty strong, huh? So he's summoning more minions. Cloak and Dagger is incredibly, incredibly strong right now. Glass Knife deals 12, or Dash deals 10. I'll just play Dash. It probably would have been better to play Glass Knife. I don't think it matters very much. Alright, we have our Expertise again. So, let's see. We have 6 AoE damage, 8 AoE damage. We deal a little bit of damage to the gremlins. Make sure that they die. Sort of sucks to get weakened, I guess. Perfect. And Flying Knee gives us extra energy for next turn. See how he's spending every other turn, like, summoning guys, and then he gets one turn where he either attacks or buffs only himself. So he's a lot less threatening than he could be otherwise. We'll play Piercing Whale here just to deal 2 damage to him. And then next turn we have him dead, I believe. That's a pretty good fight. We got to heal off that one. It's incredible how, like, these relics that we have aren't that insane. They don't work that well with the other things that our deck is doing or anything, but just, like, the combination of all of these powers that we're playing. We've got a very big deck which we can chock full of powers. We've got a lot of innate stuff which gets going on turn 1. The combination of it all just sort of can overwhelm enemies even though we're only on 3 energy. Whetstone will upgrade 2 random attacks from our deck when we pick it up. And we have a Poison Stab, Bouncing Flask, and Expertise. I think there's no reason at all to think about taking any of these cards. I've talked about how card draw isn't doing that much for us, and I think that's still true for Expertise. And then Bouncing Flask and Poison Stab, these are cards which don't have block on them. They're cards which do not have block written on them. And that's like a huge thing that I'm thinking about when I'm looking at cards that deal damage, because we have cards which do deal damage which do have block written on them. And it's a really big deal with a bottled footwork and a footwork in this particular deck. We have cards that deal damage with block written on them like Dash, like Cloak and Dagger. These cards are just more appealing than cards which deal damage which don't have block written on them, and we're capable of getting enough block to win the game without going to cards which deal damage which don't have block written on them. So we might as well stick with the cards which do have block written on them. That's a semi-simplistic explanation of my thinking there. Alright, the event. Is this like the first event we've taken in this entire act? Yeah, and it was a hallway fight. That's sort of hilarious. Alright, so we have another fight. We got an accuracy this time, so our shivs will deal an additional 3 damage, which is not very relevant, really. We also drew our footwork that isn't innate on turn 1. So we're like healing for 10 this turn or something, and playing a gazillion powers. This fight's interesting. We have an enemy who will give us a really nasty debuff on turn 2 if he's not dead already, and an enemy who does very little whatsoever. I think in this case our deck is so strong that we can just handle this guy on his own, and so I think I'll kill the sentry here on turn 1. Like so. Honestly, I think going after the Sentry or the Spheric Guardian would have been fine there. In a deck this strong, I don't think it matters that much which one we prioritize. But I suspect that it will be a little bit better to go after the Sentry first. The only issue is that we need to make 22 block next turn, and we are frail. I don't think that it will be a problem. 11, 9 plus after image, yeah. So we don't get to play 1,000 cuts. That's okay. There's no AoE in this fight. And from here, he doesn't really do anything as special. He'll attack us for 11 again at some point, I believe, but it just doesn't matter much. We have Calculated Gamble. Anytime you have Calculated Gamble and you're thinking about drawing more cards, in fact, you can extend this to any card which draws cards. Anytime you're thinking about drawing cards in a turn, it's really important to look at what's left in your deck. If you're just perfectly fine with these cards making up your hand next turn, like, why draw cards? I already have stuff I can do this turn. I could get maybe a little bit more damage out of Calculated Gamble, but I'm just really happy with this hand. There isn't much that can go wrong here. We've got enough block. We've got a little bit of damage. Obviously, we have Infinite Blades that's making us more attacks all the time. And so I just don't see a reason to Calculated Gamble. I'm going to actually remove it from the deck so that we don't draw it again, because I think in general we're going to be happy with the hands that we get drawn. Okay, we drew about as poorly as possible. I think that we're still fine though, right? Ooh, we take 3 damage here. That'll be alright. We'll heal that on turn 1 of the next fight. Just straight away. Alright, so Dagger Spray doesn't have block written on it. Bouncing Classic Plus doesn't have block written on it. Cloak and Dagger, I think at this point it's become extremely obvious why Cloak and Dagger is insane in this deck, and we're going to just pick another one of them. The Stabby Book is, I think, the toughest of the elite fights, because our upfront damage doesn't do anything in this fight. This guy is just still alive. It doesn't matter that he has 30 less health. He's still alive and hitting us. On the other hand, a Well-Laid Plans holding on to Piercing Wail means that we have a really nice ability to Piercing Wail on one of the... This guy, how he scales is that he attacks for 7 more and more and more times. So he'll get to a point where he's like attacking for 7 5 times in a turn. And we probably are going to want to hold Piercing Wail until he starts to get up around that. And then play it and take less damage. Take a Piercing Wail will basically block for 30 on that turn, which is pretty good. Trying to work out what exactly we do with these other cards. Cloak and Dagger deals less damage than Dash right now. And Predator draws us cards but results in us taking damage. I think the card draw is valuable enough to Predator. It's the most damage as well. We take 7. It's insignificant damage. We'll heal it instantly at the start of the next fight, if it's still on us at the start of the next fight, or we may just heal it as this fight continues. Drawing toward 1,000 cuts to get a lot more damage out is pretty important. 1,000 cuts represents a huge amount of this deck's damage, so getting card draw going until we draw it is really nice. Tactician means we'll be able to play every card in our hand except for Concentrate this turn. Do we want a Footwork, or do we want to play Slice, or what's going on exactly? Let's see. So he's attacking for 21, so we can discard a Defend and a Tactician. That's just fine. Ironically, it turns out that this energy is not helping us to do anything in any way. We're just going to end the turn with 3 energy. But hey, that's fine. Keep holding the Piercing Wail for later in the fight. This would be the turn where we wanted to have that extra energy. Dash apparently makes us 18 block and deals 13 damage. That sounds pretty good. We may have needed to Swift Pot there. This fight's going to start scaling in really nasty ways. He's still only at 5 times 4. So next turn he may be at 7 times 5. That'll probably be the Piercing Wail turn. We still didn't get 1,000 cuts in play, jeez. At some point we're just going to end up accidentally killing him with like mediocre damage dealing stuff. I think we're getting pretty close to that. Next turn, 1,000 cuts deflect Piercing Wail. Seems fine. Then kill him the turn after. Should happen. Have an Exploding Pot if needed. I'm just trying to like plan ahead and make sure that stuff is working. So I'm not going to Flying Knee. We don't actually need the energy. We'll just hold on to Glass Knife and play it the turn after. Gee, it only saves us 4 health. Okay, we can take a little bit of damage to deal 8. So there's the 7 times 5. We've got 1,000 cuts. Here's the Piercing Wail we've been holding for the entire fight for this exact turn. And we Shiv, and we Glass Knife. And we can deflect. And we just need to... The Shiv already deals 6, so we need to deal a little bit of extra damage this turn. His turns where he makes 1 attack, he doesn't actually scale at all. So this was a very non-threatening turn for us. But we got him dead regardless. Good fight. Prayer Wheel makes non-boss chests also contain cards. Not very relevant. In general, our relics aren't very good in this run. It would be much easier to have stronger relics, but they're good enough. So that's cool with me. Distraction, Sneaky Strike, and Leg Sweep are our options. I actually like Leg Sweep here quite a bit. I remember we took, I think, Cloak and Dagger over Leg Sweep. Like, where's the map? Like down here or something. We took a Cloak and Dagger over Leg Sweep. And I talked about how I think Leg Sweep's pretty good in this deck, but Cloak and Dagger was just better. Here you go. Here's Leg Sweep. So, doesn't have block written on it. Distraction is... I mean, our upgraded Distraction is not terribly great for us, honestly. It's been doing some okay things here and there, but Leg Sweep is just a really good card. And a huge part of taking this card is recognizing that we don't have enough weak in our deck. It takes us like 6 turns to get through our deck, pretty much. And we only have 4 weak in it. So if we want to keep a single target weakened, where's the other one? Neutralize. 2 weak, 2 weak. So if we want to keep a single target weakened, we need 6 weak in our deck. And that's being optimistic. And Leg Sweep gets us there. Alright, one more fight. This is a bit of a nasty fight. These guys do scale up pretty rapidly and deal quite a lot of damage. I'm just trying to draw 1,000 cuts as early as possible in the turn. Trying to play the card draw early here. Alright, we didn't. Is this a fight where we want to Swift Potion, I wonder? I think we'll be fine. I think our numbers are just so big that we're okay. It would be really, really nice to have 1,000 cuts in play right now, though. God, that card is good in our deck. Yeah. So we have Caltrops in play. They'll deal damage to themselves and kill themselves. Getting attacked for a bit. It's okay to take some damage, also. So I think I'll take... I'll be playing Predator this turn, not Leg Sweep. Predator, Defend, Shiv, blocks for 11. And we get attacked for... I think I'm not going to kill this guy right now, so we'll get attacked for 18, so we take 7. That's insignificant damage. We just healed that on turn 1. This guy dies to a Shiv next turn. We got extra damage out of Caltrops by not killing him there. Okay, still no 1,000 cuts. Got another Footwork, which I believe I will play, and then just double Cloak and Dagger, Slice, Neutralize, Shiv. Deals a ton of damage, and blocks for a ton as well. We actually don't need to kill this guy still. We can just let him die to Caltrops. We're just making that much block. Neutralize here, I guess. We're going to kill this guy next turn. I think Caltrops a pretty strong power. It often makes a very large amount of damage for you. The only issue with it is that it's bad against Automaton, the Act 2 boss who hyper beams you. Just doesn't do that much against him specifically. Other than that, I love it. If you are wondering how I feel about Caltrops. There's 1,000 cuts, literal bottom card of the deck. I think he's dead though. Cool. So we got a Strength Potion. We have a Caltrops if we'd like. It's going to be a Caltrops plus. The extra damage feels nice to me. We could also take Dodge and Roll, which is an incredibly strong card when you have Footwork in your deck. Gains 4 block, and next turn gains 4 block as well, so it's applying the Footwork bonus twice. Instead of gaining 4 block twice, we'll gain 9 block twice, so our Footworks are essentially making us 10 extra block on this 1 energy card. Yeah, it's a really, really nice card. This is starting to get into, like, is it possible for us to lose any of the Act 3 elite fights, and which one are we most threatened by, and how would we beat it at this point? I actually think we already beat the Act 3 bosses pretty well, even with 3 energy, believe it or not. I'm trying to think. We could really use some more damage against some of the Act 3 elites, so I think I'll go Caltrops. We have so much max HP and so much sustain that it's okay if we don't draw as much block one turn. And I think the Strength Pot is better than the Exploding Pot somewhat. It will just deal more damage in this upcoming fight. There's no reason to rest, because we're almost at full HP anyway, and we're going to gain the 5 HP we're missing on turn 1 of the next fight. And picking between Glass Knife and Cloak and Dagger as our upgrade targets, I believe. Don't think we've needed that extra energy on turn 1 for Adrenaline ever since we got the Lantern, and we're likely to get an Energy Relic out of this fight, so I don't think the extra turn 1 energy is that big a deal. You know, I say that, but I'm not sure it's true. I could go either way. Cloak and Dagger is a really nice upgrade. We have 2 Strength Potions right now. I'm not concerned about this Collector fight too much. I'll upgrade Cloak and Dagger. Even if it's not the best upgrade now, there are like a couple of other relics that we could pick up which would make it instantly the best upgrade. Alright, so we got an extra Infinite Blades. I also drew every Cloak and Dagger in the entire world on turn 1, apparently. I meant to draw for 1,000 cuts at the start there. I just didn't. Whoops. I think we'll use 1 Strength Potion for this fight. Okay. Well, they're not all dead yet, and we didn't get 1,000 cuts in play yet. I'm gonna Swift Potion toward it. Concentrate's a good card this turn. It's really nice to draw Concentrate on the turn that we Swift Potion. Alright, so we do want to be killing his minions. There are decks which just want to kill the Collector and won't be interested in killing the minions. This is not one of them because this deck is so good at dealing AoE damage. If we're trying to just kill the Collector, we're wasting all of our AoE damage. Although, of course, unless we actually draw 1,000 cuts in our life, we're not that good at dealing AoE damage. The difficulty that we've had with drawing 1,000 cuts is why I did not buy Apotheosis earlier on in the game. I was talking about how we had to actually draw it and play it for it to do anything. So we got 1,000 cuts at no cost to us. So that's fine. It would be lovely if we drew it and did something with it. But Apotheosis would have actually cost 200 gold, and that would take away our ability to buy a relic in Act 3, which could make the difference in... Like, the Act 3 elite fights are actually pretty serious business. That could make a difference for sure. Let's get our other Dexterity in play. I want to concentrate. And then I think we're going to be playing Survivor this turn. I think we go Dash Survivor, Glass Knife. So you want to discard these guys. We're actually making so much block that applying Weak to the enemy doesn't do anything. Like, it just doesn't matter. Okay. I guess we didn't even need to play Survivor, but sure, we got it. Caltrops is a little bit of extra damage. We can play Predator this turn as well, I think. I think it's fine to take a little bit from this guy. Cloak and Dagger is, like, better to play than Predator other than the card draw, but drawing toward 1,000 cuts. That's going to just ensure that the fight ends well for us. We are really bad at drawing 1,000 cuts. That's impressive. Okay, we've killed the ads without it. We got a burst and drew it with leg sweep, which is, I think, the only good target in the deck, so that's pretty nice. This guy's weakened for the rest of the fight, presumably. And he's coming in for 28 now, which we care about, I think, approximately 0. Like, even if all of that damage got through our block, we have 79 health right now. Okay, he's gonna resummon. Having 1,000 cuts in play is pretty nice. Oh! Oh man, Burst goes with Cloak and Dagger. The last time I looked at this card, we did not have Cloak and Dagger Plus in our deck. So that's actually a pretty strong interaction, huh? Good turn. It's unfortunate that we don't have well-laid plans or anything, so we're really just clicking cards at this point. We're not, like, doing huge amounts of strategizing as we navigate this fight. This is the last turn where we had debuffed. I think we will go after ads one more time. We're taking some damage here for sure. We're going to have everything weakened. This is the first fight where the enemies have had numbers big enough for it to be noticeable that we're on 3 energy rather than 4. Getting one more card played that turn would have been a big difference. So this turn we have... Let's see. This guy just dies to AoE this turn. I don't think we'll bother killing him. He'll die to Caltrops and we're blocking for enough that he's not dealing damage anyway. Oh, I misjudged. This guy doesn't die yet. Well, they're only attacking for 28, so if I just Survivor, he dies to Caltrops now. I don't know if the Collector's AI works the same way that the Gremlin Leader's AI works, where he prioritizes significantly summoning more guys when his guys are dead. I don't know if that's how he works or not. He has the mandatory turn 4 debuff on you, which he does every single time, unless it's turn 3. I didn't... I should really know that, considering that it just happened, but I wasn't paying good enough attention, I guess. Yeah, so that always happens. I've noticed, especially lately, I feel like when I fight him, he doesn't prioritize summoning guys again very much at all. I don't know if that's, like, a new thing, or if it's always been the case and I've only just noticed, or if it's been just random, or what, but yeah. Anyway, this fight's pretty decent if we have good enough AoE. And generally I'd say that the Collector fight is defined by having good enough AoE to get through the minions while still dealing good damage to the Collector himself, just because he doesn't scale up that fast. Alright, so we got through Act 2. Big notes from this act. We did decide to go after elites. We're still looking for very strong interactions for our deck, and also the elite fights are very safe for us because of just how many strong cards we have, despite the fact that we only have 3 energy. Turns out it's not the end of the world. We chose not to buy Apotheosis at a store just because I felt that the 200 gold was hard to justify when, one, it's going to be very hard to find a turn to play Apotheosis on and be happy spending that energy on non-attacks or blocks in a deck which is, you know, so hampered on energy and also so good at getting attack and block out of cards that it plays. We get so much block for 1 energy in this deck, so it's really hard to justify spending an energy on something other than that. And 2, because it was just going to be hard to draw it, and we could spend that gold on a relic, something that affected play all the time, even if we didn't draw, you know, a specific card in a deck that was this big. We took fights early on in the act because we desperately were looking for something like a Noxious Fumes or 1,000 Cuts, a way that we could deal sustained damage throughout a fight, high sustained or scaling damage throughout a fight without requiring energies being spent on it. And that goes into 2 things. 1, we don't have that much energy to spend on damage. 2, we'd really like to spend our energy on creating block with 2 copies of Footwork and an Afterimage in our deck. So it was really nice to be able to find 1,000 Cuts at this fight. In general, I do like events quite a lot in Act 2, but in this deck, we were strong enough to take the fights, and we were trying to solve a specific problem which could be solved by a single card. And so taking the fights went up in value quite a lot. The elite fights were fine. We didn't get particularly strong relics or anything from them, but they were fine. Getting Lantern, I would say, that's the best relic that we found, and it has been considerable how much extra stuff Lantern lets us do on the first turn. Bottling Adrenaline, I guess, was actually quite good as well. So we've been able to craft a very strong turn 1 for our deck. And in a deck of this size, getting a strong turn 1 is great. It sets up all the other cards in the deck to be better. The fact that your deck has, you know, somewhat random cards in it doesn't matter quite as much if they start to all become strong. The other really big thing we did was we didn't take cards which didn't say block on them. Not interested, especially once we got 1,000 Cuts, I was just not interested in adding cards to the deck which were focused on attacking but could not block. And again, that's because of how many Footworks we have and how little energy we have and how little card draw we have. We just want our deck to be very densely block cards so that we can take advantage of those Footworks and mitigate incoming damage. And then we did get Enchiridion from the Cursed Tome event, and I explained why that was good to take. Apparently this act took 1 hour and 15 minutes. Wow, I hope you guys have been enjoying watching this and hearing the explanations. So let's take a look at our boss rare. A second copy of 1,000 Cuts. I think that's great here, actually. I might get a little bit worried about taking 2 copies of 1,000 Cuts against the Awakened one. I mean, honestly, I'd be concerned about this deck with the Awakened one in her pre-nerf state, but now that she only gains 1 power from powers, 1 strength from powers instead of 2, stuff like 1,000 Cuts gets a lot better, and you've seen how difficult it is for our deck to draw it and how rapidly it starts to deal immense amounts of damage once we do draw it. So think that's an easy pick. It's nice that it upgrades, of course, with Frozen Egg as well. And it heals us for 2 with Bird Face Turn. And our boss relic is going to be... Wow. Okay. Either Snecko Eye, Philosopher's Stone, or Pandora's Box. So Snecko Eye is actually really bad in this deck because of the turn 1 that we've crafted. Snecko Eye can be very powerful and silent, and I remember talking about how Snecko Eye would be good at the end of Act 1 because of our leg sweeps and dashes. At this point, though, even though we've added the Predator and 2 copies of 1,000 Cuts, which obviously cost 2 energy each, we have this turn 1, which is so powerful. And it's so reliant on 0 and 1 cost cards. If we turn our turn 1 into, you know, a bunch of randomly costed cards, because all of these cards will randomize their cost on turn 1, even though they're like bottled or innate or whatever, they still get random costs. Our deck just gets a lot worse. And all the other cards in the deck will get a lot worse if we don't get those powers into play. So, we could think about Pandora's Box to transform all strikes into defense. I think the deck is strong enough to win the game on 3 energy, but Defend is a really good card in our deck. It's just a really good card. We have 2 copies of Footwork, one of them's bottled. It just blocks for a ton. There's nothing wrong with Defend in our deck at all. So I think this is Philosopher's Stone. Gain energy at the start of each turn. All enemies start with 2 strength. Philosopher's Stone definitely has a large drawback, but we can mitigate that 2 strength. 1 energy for us is considerably more beneficial to us than 2 energy for the enemy is detrimental to us. Because of our Footworks and our Afterimage, we're just really good at creating block, and all of our cards say block on them. And yeah, the 4th energy helps us get 1,000 Cuts in play, helps us deal damage, helps us empty our hand every turn. Lots of reasons to love this relic. So we're going to take a Philosopher's Stone. All right. My voice is starting to go hoarse. I hope you guys have enjoyed this over-explained Act 2 of the Silent Ascension 15 run. I'm having a lot of fun with it, just talking through all of my thoughts and trying to make clear what I'm thinking and why I'm doing different stuff. This is a strong deck. It's a little atypical, but a lot of the things that I've been saying have been things which would apply to any deck, I would say. And I've also been able to, I think, relate why I'm doing something weird if I'm doing something weird. Overall, though, we've been able to prioritize elites, and so we have done so, and I think that's a really big takeaway. And I think a really important thing to stress is we're playing a larger than usual deck, and that is changing some of our decisions. We're, not prioritizing specific cards as much. Instead, we're prioritizing relics. And when we upgrade stuff, we're prioritizing looking at innate cards and stuff that our deck can do on turn 1, because turn 1 is so much more important than, turn 4. We can't really predict what cards we'll have in hand, and all of the cards do a ton of stuff anyway because we have Footwork and Afterimage in play. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed Act 2. I'll be back next time with Act 3. I have links to my Twitch and my Discord and stuff like that below the videos. If you've really been enjoying these YouTube videos and want to support the YouTube video creation, there's also a link to Patreon there. If you don't want to sub on Twitch or whatever because you don't watch me on Twitch and that doesn't make sense, Patreon is the place where I direct people to support my YouTube specific content. And as I'm spending more time creating that, I think I'll actually start plugging it and probably updating it and stuff again. It's been a while since I focused on YouTube content, even as much as I am right now. Yeah. Hope you've enjoyed the Spireside chat. Let me know what you thought, if any of the decisions were really interesting to you, or if you'd like clarification on exactly why I was doing the stuff that I was doing. I'm happy to answer questions. And I'll be back next time for Act 3 with our Ascension 15 Silent deck. Bye, guys.